if you want to have your say. Tell me how you're coping. 0344 499 1000 is my telephone number. Somebody who, I don't know whether they're coping or not, because you know what? Every week we have some lovely chat, but I do worry about the frothing. He's probably beside himself today. Let's check in on Dr. Roger Givol, CEO of Fair Money, personal finance and credit expert. Dr. Roger, I'm assuming that you are beside yourself and have had to peel yourself off the ceiling this morning.
Totally. I'm going to need some frothosuction. This is...
Wow. We better get straight onto it. Petrol piracy is what you want to talk to me about first?
Yes, the wholesale price of petrol has fallen 20 pence since June, but it has been reduced by only 9 pence at the pumps, even by the giant supermarkets. Now, the RAC and others warn us not to keep thinking that supermarkets continue to have the cheapest petrol, because they don't. Independents are dropping their prices to realistic, honest levels. That's like £1.67 versus £1.83 at the other places, and that's starting to drive the supermarkets down. But we're still getting massively ripped off at the pumps.
Can I just ask, though, about that? Because some would say, and I'm not trying to defend those organisations, but some would say they buy their fuel in advance at certain prices so they can guarantee supply and delivery. Until they've sold that batch, they can't bring down the price for the next batch. It's rather like, if you bought a whole load of ingredients for, a particular price, you've got to sell it at the price that you bought it for.
Oh, I think that's a very fair point. But don't you think that they would have provided that as an explanation against the tsunami of criticism they're receiving from all corners? Nobody's ever mentioned that as a possibility. And with the prices jumping up and down the way they do and keeping rising, really, I'd be a little suspect that that's the only reason. But my real focus, as you said, is not so much on the energy companies, it's on the government, which is taking in an obscene, obnoxious 80% of what we pay for a litre of petrol in triple tax and VAT.
But you see, that again is my point, because I know that you wanted to talk like father, like son. You wanted to talk about the likes of BP and Shell, where, of course, they're making very significant profits. But then, on the other hand, as I would say, they're just doing their job. The people who are not doing their job in terms of how they're governed, how they're organised, and indeed how they're taxed, and how the markets work, is the government and the regulator.
Well, precisely, yeah. Please.
No. Well, that's kind of my theory on it, and I think we're just pointing our finger of ire at the wrong people.
Well, I think that I don't believe in a windfall tax, as I think you don't. I don't think you tax somebody just because they're making money. That's a bit too socialist for me. But I do think that with the kind of profits they're making, humongous, all-time record profits, they could reduce the prices. So I do think the energy companies should give us some respite, even temporarily, by dropping the prices a bit. But the real culprit is the government with the tax, as you say. And I ask myself, why isn't there a cap on petrol as there is on home energy prices?
Absolutely. But you see, what I would do is I would be saying to energy companies, right, we've got to completely turn this market on its head. Every individual should have a certain allowance of fuel that they can buy at a certain price that is going to be regulated. And then after that, you can charge the market price if you wish. We've also got to deal with standing charges, which are all over the shop. The regulator's got to wake up on that. And also, I would be threatening... I wouldn't threaten or impose a windfall tax, because, like you, I don't agree with them. But I would threaten one. And I would threaten one if certain investment parameters are not met, because I want to see that money, since they're making it, I want to see that money reinvested so that we can get energy security.
Well, I was going on to say exactly that. We think alike. In other words, I would threaten the windfall taxes and carry them out if I had to, if they didn't make those investments and reduce the price of petrol, at least temporarily, to give people some respite. But as you say, the real culprit's the government. Why in the world aren't they doing something about this? James, I think I may have found the answer to this the other day when I saw some television footage of various top politicians, including our candidates for prime minister, being chauffeured around in very nice cars by their drivers. And this perhaps explains why we've never heard the word, unbelievably, the word petrol in any of the debates or hustings so far, despite it being the most important thing in our lives, along with the home energy. It explains also why they've never even touched on the subject, despite motorway riots and blockages only weeks ago, and why they haven't done or promised to do a blessed thing. It's because, as you say, they don't live in, I mean, they're perfectly normal human beings, but once they get into the Westminster bubble, they no longer live in our world, and they just don't think of these things.
And I suppose if you're not buying petrol on a regular basis because you have a chauffeur-driven car, and I don't have a problem with that, they've got to get to one place to the next, but it means that you are not going to be doing that weekly fill-up. They're not going to see the weekly price in the same way that if you're not doing your own shopping, you're not going to see the supermarket prices if you're not going in day after day.
Yes, I can just imagine it. Talk to my driver, Charles. He handles those matters. I'm busy campaigning for you to elect me to serve you. You know, I can just well see them saying that. Absolutely.
I think we need to work on the accent a little bit, Roger, but that's okay. Just in terms of frothing, I've been asking people how they're coping. I'm assuming you get a lot of incoming. Just very briefly, what's the number one worry?
I think the number one worry has got to be a tie between petrol and home energy.
And I think that is the thing that concerns us most. There we go. Roger, thank you so much for joining us this morning, taking us through your thoughts on those energy prices and perhaps what can be done and who's responsible for all this. That's Dr. Roger Givalba. He is CEO of Fair Money, personal finance and credit expert, bringing us up to date on all your personal finances. We will turn our attention